Okay, the meeting is called to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Were there any changes to the minutes from our November 11th meeting? Okay, if there were no changes, then the minutes are approved as written. So now we can go to Rachel's report.
Great, thank you, Jamie. 1 second while I switch pages. So good morning, everyone. Deborah could not attend the meeting today. She had to go to the executive committee meeting, so I will be covering the topics that she normally would speak about in her staff report in addition to my report today. So since this is our first CAMM meeting for the 2021 calendar year, I thought it would be interesting to begin with a brief review of the cataloging statistics from 2020. COVID-19 has clearly taken its toll on acquisitions and cataloging. In 2020, only 185,739 bibliographic records were created. So this is a decrease of more than 54,000 records from the previous year. With 2 new member libraries, CCS has had to complete a lot of cleanup projects to delete tags and deduplicate records. So nearly twice as many bibliographic records were modified this year as last year, for a total of 831,638 records modified. With the addition of the 2 new libraries, there was a significant increase in the number of item records created. Just under 1 million item records were created in 2020. So this was only 182,491 records more than the previous year. So there are now nearly 1.5 million bibliographic records and 7.5 million item records in the database. So it will be interesting to see how the 2019 statistics compared to the post-COVID-19 statistics in the future. If you are interested in analyzing how the pandemic affected your library, Bob has added a new report to web reports. It's under statistics and it's called monthly graphs. Right here is monthly graphs. And this creates a nice bar graph. So under graph, you can choose the category of data that you would like to graph. For cataloging, we have one called items added, but there's also a number of different circulation statistics that you can look at. Organization and the start month and end month. So it's a pretty neat tool for you if you're interested in creating a usable bar graph. So next on my agenda is the Polaris update. The training server has been updated to 6.7. Miyako and I will be leading training sessions in March, and April, I've scheduled the technical services training for March 17th at 1 p.m. Attendees can register on L2. Production will be upgraded in April after we've completed the training. A new section has been added to the training site called Technical Services in LEAP. This includes a course on serials check-in. However, the cataloging course will not be able to be completed until the 7.0 update has been released. The majority of all serials check-in functions have been added to LEAP. However, LEAP cannot create new issues without predicting future issues, nor can labels be printed yet. So not enough copy cataloging features have been added to LEAP for me to recommend using it yet. Deduplication and editing mark records will not be added until the 7.0 update, which will be completed in the second quarter. However, the 7.0 update will not include spine label printing, which is unfortunate. So it still doesn't have a full, complete workflow that will be available in LEAP until after the 7.0 update. So the next on my agenda is an update on the new RDA Toolkit documentation. The LC PCC policy statements will not be finalized until 2022. So CCS will follow the LC and PCC recommendation to not require the adoption of the new toolkit at this time. The original toolkit is still available at original.rtatoolkit.org. If you are interested in familiarizing yourself with the new toolkit, documentation has been added to the catalog wiki on the bibliographic input standards page and the online cataloging resources page. The links to these pages are in the presentation, so that will be available on the CCS webpage after the meeting. These two documents are charts in an Excel format. The first one is the bibliographic input standards chart that you're familiar with, but it has an additional column with a link to the equivalent page in the RDA toolkit. And the other chart is one that lists all of the RDA elements, including the ones that aren't in the bibliographic input standards chart, and the equivalent Mark 21 field that it corresponds to. So next is an update from PASS and CIRC ILL advisory groups on the coding of serials as monographs. Both PASS and CIRC ILL advisory groups discussed the topic in their previous meeting, and they decided that they want to change the catalog as little as possible. They've received no complaints about the serials coded as monographs, so they do not want the practice to change. The group members are concerned that if the practice were to change and they were to code the records as serials, additional staff intervention would be needed if patrons placed holds at the item level. So recently, the topic of the Midwest Tape Binge Box product ID numbers came up, and I did send an email out to the CATS listserv about that. So I wanted to review that again. So the issue that was reported was records that had the product number placed in the 024, and it was coded as a UPC number. So when searching for this, it brought up the wrong records that actually had it also a similar number in the UPC number field. And so on investigating this, it appears that it may have actually been in the OCLC record and not necessarily in the Midwest Tape on order record, but we're still asking Midwest Tape to look into it. The product number is usually in the 037 field of the on order records. And so if you compare these two images, you can see that we have the 037 field in our mark record in the Polaris database, but you can also see that there's some variations in the OCLC number, in the OCLC record, where it's also in the 028, as well as in the previous example, which I put on this other page here, where you can see that it was in the 024 field with these extra zeros before it. But this is the same number as what's in the 028 and the 037. So when you are cataloging these binge box records, it is important to pay attention to which field the product number is placed in. If you see it in the 024 field coded as a UPC, you can delete it. But if it's in the 028 or 037 field, those are acceptable fields for the binge box product number. Both of those fields are indexed as a standard number in Polaris, and you can also search for them as all keyword as well. So next on my list is the website RFP update. So I'm happy to report the website RFP process is going really well. CCS received bids from numerous companies and selected 2 finalists. The CCS staff heard presentations from 2 vendor finalists and selected 1 company to be the vendor. CCS is in the process of finalizing the contract negotiations with the chosen vendor. The contract is scheduled for review by governing board at their February meeting. So at the database management discussion on the forthcoming title records that occurred in November and December, the discussion focused on the impact on holds, bibliographic standards, and acquisitions workflow if they were to allow forthcoming title records. The motion to allow the forthcoming title records did not pass. Palatine does still have some forthcoming title records in the catalog, but the settings in the item records has been changed to only allow Palatine patrons to place holds on those items. So next is a scrap update. So at the previous meeting, scrap discussed several cataloging policies at the meeting and decided to accept them as they are and not to change the current practice. These included the literary format, not requiring additional tags in vendor cataloged records, not requiring final records to be changed to a full encoding level, continuing to code certain serials as monographs, and how the 240 is used. Virginia announced that she plans to experiment with how the Marcive files are created so that CCS would be able to eliminate the use of the 945 field. A full list of updates to the catalog wiki are available in the minutes from the last meeting. Scrap did make 1 new recommendation that we will vote on soon. The group discussed the local requirements to use the 024 field for the video game platform numbers instead of the 028 field that is recommended by OLAC. Since both fields are indexed as standard numbers and display in the pack, Scrap believes that following the standard practice should be fine. So Scrap has asked that CAMM vote to approve the recommendation to eliminate the local practice of requiring the 024 field for video game platform numbers. Jamie, would you like to add anything to this?
I don't think so, unless anybody has any questions on what the recommendation is or is about. Okay. So I guess, yeah, we can go ahead. Did you want to use a poll for that?
Sure.
Okay. So I guess whenever you're ready, we'll have a poll here. So yes would be to eliminate the local practice. Is that how we want to do it, Rachel? So yes is to get rid of the local practice and include platform numbers in either field.
Wait, I'm abstaining. Oh, I'm not even voting.
Okay. Yep. Well, now it looks like most of the votes are in. So we have 24 yeses and 0 no's. So we will approve the recommendation.
Great.
Were there any other questions for Rachel?
If you think of any questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself now.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you, Rachel. And we
Okay.
can move on to Virginia.
Virginia, you can share your screen now.
Okay. How do I do that?
So if you move your mouse
share
to the
session.
bottom, you can share screen at the bottom.
Okay. Here we are. We'll share this one. I'm doing it fancy today. I'm going to do it on I'll do a quick presentation, thinking easier for you guys to see my notes. Okay, here we are. My CAMM notes for today. The only new subject heading is going to be nail polish. I thought that was kind of odd that they finally decided to add that as subject heading, which I added to about 8 bibliographic records. We'll be sending bibs to Marcive. I'll be sending bibs to Marcive next week, hopefully on Thursday. Always seems to be a good day for that. So we'll be doing about February 18th. And I am harking back to what Rachel was talking about. I will be using a new SQL search that Bob developed for me. And this uses basically the same criteria that he uses when he does the OHM stuff, when he sends the bib records to OCLC with using the OHM project. And I tested and I'm getting good results. So it looks as though Rachel talked about as your scrap notes, we can just discuss further, not needing the 945, because I think this covers the same thing. This will cover that. And now seems like my job is morphing now to be the ebook queen, the e-resources queen. So on the electronic resources front, I thought I'd report a couple of things. Usually I do monthly loads for those libraries who use Canopy. I think there's a lot of them. I loaded about 8,400 records, bib records to them last couple of weeks. We hadn't loaded them for over 2 years. And thank you, Jamie, for helping me get me the password. I started deleting some of the bib records from the system that were not they're not available any longer. I think I've deleted about 400 maybe, or 300 or something right now. And we'll continue doing that as time permits. And I'm sure a lot of other people are interested in knowing about our digital records. They've been migrated over from RB Digital, and Zinio has been migrated over to the Overdrive platform earlier this month. Overdrive is now loading e-magazines now into our system. They're going to lay out all Zinio titles, so you may get access to more than titles than you previously had. But I'm going to keep the RD digital records in place for a while. I actually even contacted Polaris and asked, what do I do? And they said, I don't know either. So they weren't Lauren at Polaris wasn't totally positive what everything is going on either. But she said she should probably keep the RB digital records in our catalog in place for a while, and just in case things are not going right or something like that. So that's going to be so they'll be there, and I'll delete them when we need to. And that's about all my project. I can stop sharing. That's about all my report. If anybody has questions, I can I can answer. There you go, Rachel. You can take it back.
Any questions for Virginia?
Any questions for me?
Okay, thank you, Virginia.
Sure.
Okay, back to Rachel for some cataloging reminders.
I thought I heard someone say something.
Yeah, I did. I did have a question for Virginia. So if we've got the, we just got the Overdrive magazines, how do we get added in for those records?
They're automatically in.
Oh, we are. Okay, great.
If you have Overdrive magazines, it's just like when you're doing Overdrive books.
Okay.
And a good example, most of you guys will, if you look at over, I guess, one I was looking at was House Beautiful. And you can see that all your links should be there and stuff. It's just like ebooks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, next on the agenda are cataloging reminders. So first is a note on the children's subject headings. Please review the correct and incorrect forms for children's subject headings in the catalog wiki. Genres should not be included in the children's subject headings in the 655 fields. Genres should be placed in 655 fields. Actually, I meant in children's subject headings using 650 fields. Genres should be placed in the 655 fields. So one example is alphabet books. There has been a report that alphabet books were in 650 instead of 655 fields. This is an LCGFT term, so that can be in the 655 field. Periodically, reports come in of the 099 field missing from on-order records. This can happen when on-order records are hand-keyed or imported from OCLC. So please review the on-order record standards with your staff who may be hand-keying the records or importing them from OCLC. The link to the catalog wiki is on the slide. Additionally, there have been reports of the 099 field remaining in final records. I believe that this can be caused by records being rejected upon import when the encoding level is the same. So if you do use a profile that checks the encoding level, please check that the 099 field has been removed. I do have an idea of a report that can be run in Simply Reports to identify if any of the on-order records have an encoding level that is full and needs to be lower before importing records. So if you would like assistance with this, please email me at help@ccslib.org. We have received reports that 856 fields are not being deleted from records. Please review the list in the catalog wiki for the 856 fields that need to be deleted. These include URLs for cover images, excerpts, table of contents, links to other libraries or from vendors that CCS libraries don't use, as well as advertisements. There has been a question about the 010 field that can sometimes have a number beginning with the letters BL. This number comes from a vendor. It's not a valid 010 field. So if you do see this in your records, you are welcome to delete it. If you don't delete it though, and don't notice it, it's not going to be a problem for the records. So recently I reviewed a report of the system details for video games in the 753 field. I did email everyone about this already, but would like to review this again as a reminder. Many records contain data that did not adhere to the guidelines in the catalog wiki. So I corrected this information as a bulk change, but I just wanted to remind everyone again to review the guidelines for the 753 field in the catalog wiki. It lists how the data should be formatted, and it's also important to note that this field should not have punctuation at the end. We received a report that a number of anime records are missing the local genre heading for anime. LCSH does not have a heading for anime, but it can be added as a 655 with a subfield to local. So please review the anime page in the catalog wiki for a list of acceptable genre and subject headings. Are there any questions about these reminders? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next thing on our agenda. So we received a report that a number of times when people export from OCLC, they've experienced errors that are actually caused by accidentally exporting duplicate records. And then when you import the records, there's sometimes a situation when they open the record and there's like nothing in it except for the fixed fields. And so today I wanted to demonstrate how this happens and provide you with some tips on how to export records from OCLC so that you can eliminate this problem in the future. So I need to open up OCLC, so one moment. Okay, so today I'm going to begin by demonstrating the wrong way to export records, which creates the files that have duplicate records in them. So I've opened up a record, and after finding a record and editing it, I would use the icon to export the record. And this brings up the message to ask me if I want to overwrite it, append it, or cancel the output. And this only happens the first time after I've logged in. So I'm going to press overwrite. But let's say I'm looking at this record and I've forgotten something. So if I were to edit it again and then want to export it again, I don't see the message telling me to overwrite or append. So this has added the duplicate record to the file. And now I'm going to open up the file so you can see what it looks like in Mark Edit. So here you can see in my example, I've got 2 records that have been added to the file for the same title, and the same OCLC number and Mark Edit. So if I were to load this into Polaris right now, it could potentially cause some errors. So one of the things that is important to do is that after you've exported a file, close out of OCLC and then log in again so that you can see that message asking you to overwrite and append for each file that you export. So it will help you to eliminate that possibility that you will output duplicates in your OCLC record. So I'm going to open that record again and demonstrate my recommended workflow. So if I were searching for this record for the first time and didn't have it in my save file again, I would recommend editing it, but then instead of pressing export right away, saving it to a save file. So there are 2 different save files in OCLC. There's the online file and the local file. The online file would allow anyone that uses the same OCLC login to view that record online. But the local file actually saves it to your computer. So I like to recommend using the local save file. And then to search for any of your records in the local save file, you would press search and then local save file. You don't have to search for anything specific. You can just press OK. And it opens the local save file. So before exporting the records, if you save everything to your local save file, you can review the records in your list and check to make sure that there's no duplicates in the list. There could be potentially duplicates in the list if you were to save something to the local save file, forget that it's in your local save file, and then search for it again. open a new record, and then save it again. So one thing that's great for the local save file is that you don't have to export anything right away. It stays in your local save file, and you can come back to work on it later. So if you are not set up for batch processing, you would then select everything at the time you would like to export it and press Action Export. And then since I logged out before I did this, I have the message asking me if I want to overwrite or append the file again. And I'll press overwrite. And so now I have eliminated the duplicates in my file. There is an option for batch export, but it does require an additional step. So some people may choose to not use that. So under your tools and options, there is a batch tab. And then you would have to check bibliographic record export under perform local actions and batch, press apply and close. So if you do like the idea of choosing batch export, what you would need to do would be after you press action export, you would have to then press batch, process batch, select the local save file for the bibliographic records, check exports and press OK. And it exports the batch of records and displays a batch export report. Are there any questions?
Less a question and more of a comment. An alternate workflow, Walt Nixon has a macro that will let you delete your export file from within OCLC. So rather than logging out and logging back in again, you just run the macro and it deletes the existing export file and you can export.
That's kind of cool.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we're ready to move on. Jamie?
Sure, thank you, Rachel. Okay, we're to the Technical Services Open Forum. So if anybody has anything tech related that they would like to ask or discuss, now is your opportunity. This is kind of the other section of the meeting. If there's anything we didn't think about. And if nobody has anything else, are there any announcements?
Short meeting here.
Okay, well, that's it. So if there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, that's short. Bayless leaving. I guess I can leave too.